everyone. Welcome to RPS at Home for grade 8. I'm Miss Howard, and I'll introduce myself more a little bit later. Today, this is for week 7, day 2. This topic is going to be on local government and going back to school, something I think a lot of you have been thinking about. And I'm really excited about today's presentation because we're going to be combining a lot of the things that we've been talking about and working on in the last few weeks to kind of tackle this problem and think about it from both a civic point of view and an economic point of view. So I'm really excited for today's lesson. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we'll get started. So again, this lesson is all about a deep dive into local government and going back to school. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-part lesson. We've been getting a lot of good feedback. I'm going to drag myself. Been getting a lot of good feedback from you parents and teachers and other teachers and students out there about the length of our videos. And so Ms. Green and I have decided to kind of split things up. So you'll have some direct instruction with me today and take some notes and a little bit of homework. And then on Thursday, you'll have a part 2 video with Ms. Green where you'll get to really go in depth and practice the skills and kind of work through the problem that we're facing today. Okay, so let's get started. Again, I'm Miss Howard. You'll see Miss Green on Thursday. We're both civics teachers at Albert Hill Middle School. Go Tigers. And before we start, I added this really cool graphic. I really love it. You breathe in as it expands, and then you breathe out as it closes, and you hold. So if you need to take a couple deep breaths before we start, please breathe with that as I talk through this. So how are you feeling? Do you need a snack? Do you need to get some water? Maybe you just finished a bunch of Edgenuity stuff and you need to take a break. Like, really check in with yourself right now. You can get to us later. We'll be here waiting for you. Are you in a space that's productive? Maybe you need to put some headphones on or move if you can somewhere else so that you can hear the lesson and really be engaged. And finally, how are you mentally? Like, if you need to stop the video, take a few deep breaths, breathe with the, I don't know, what do you call those things? You're gonna have to tell us in our social media what those things are called. I forget. If you wanna breathe with the toy, then you can do that. So if you need to stop, we'll catch you later. But if you're ready, let's keep going. So today, we're gonna go over our lesson goals, some words of the day, why this stuff even matters. We're gonna talk about schools and government and COVID. And then I'm gonna give you a mission for today and close out. So if you're ready, let's get started. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify and explain the costs and benefits of a given policy solution using cost-benefit analysis. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some decision-making processes and how it works in government level. And then Ms. Green is going to be able to actually give you a structure for how you make a decision about things, especially something that's an important government. All right, so this is what you need for our lesson. Something to write with, some paper or a notebook that maybe you've been keeping some of our work in, and a brain that's ready to do some work. Are you ready? If you don't have it, you can pause and then we can go. Let's go. Okay, so these are our words of the day. Policy, which I know we've heard before, it's a word we've actually done. School board, and cost-benefit analysis, which we've also mentioned before, but we've never had it as a word of the day. So let's go through and define each of these. Get ready to write. So policy, if you've had your paper with you, maybe you're in a notebook, can you flip back and find what it is? We've definitely done this one before. If not, this is it, you can write it again. It's a plan or solution that government creates in order to address some kind of problem. It can be in the form of action, like setting up certain kind of programs or providing services, or it can be in the form of regulation, like making a law. For example, too many people are speeding on the highway, so we're going to make a law that this is the speed limit and there are these kind of consequences if you break it, right? But remember, policies can be as simple as a dress code. That's an example of a policy, or something big like an international policy or negotiation tactic that a president might set, okay? So if you need to pause and keep writing, go for it. If not, let's keep going. Another word of the day that we have today is school board. Maybe you've heard this before, your parents talk about it. That picture right there is our current RPS school board. But who are they? They are an elected or appointed group of people who oversee the operation of kindergarten through 12 schools in a city or a county, okay? Now, our school board, the RPS school board, is elected. So there is an election every 4 years, and we send a representative from all of our 9 districts in Richmond City to serve on the school board for 4 years, okay? So copy that down. You can jot some things down. Now, you don't need every word, right? Get the stuff that you need to know. And that's a school board. We're going to talk about them a little bit more. And then our last word is cost-benefit analysis. Now, I know we've mentioned this in previous videos because we've actually worked on this kind of thing. We've talked about costs and benefits, but what is it? It's a process that's used to analyze decisions in which costs and benefits of different alternatives are considered. So it's kind of figuring out, like, how do you weigh the pros and cons of a decision, right? And there's a lot of different models out there. You can do a simple T-chart. There's even really, more fancy tables you can use. Miss Green on Thursday is going to introduce you to one of those. So I hope you look out for that. But I always like to think about it as like a scale, right? It's like, what's the pro or con of this decision? And you think about another idea, what's the pro or con of this one? And then you choose what the best decision is. We're going to talk about this in terms of government and schools today. So why does this stuff matter? Why are we talking about this? Well, I think you probably have a stake in this, right? Like, local government and schools are part of local government, play a really direct role in most people's life. But actually, very few citizens actually vote or participate in local government. Maybe something that you covered in civics before you left the end of this year is the fact that most Americans, when they vote for a presidential election, which is just the leader of the national government. Fewer and fewer citizens are actually voting in local elections or even state elections these days. But the thing is that, like, our city or your county, if you live in a county, those places directly influence our lives kind of in a much more real way than national or federal, the national government. Another reason this matters is that even though you're really young, it's important to really understand the costs and benefits of different decisions that our local government makes so that we can be advocates, so that we can stand up and say we agree or stand up and say we disagree, and we can really advocate for alternatives we think are best. So even though we elect our school board and we elect our representatives to lead us, that doesn't mean that we lose responsibility, right? Like, we also have to be aware of local issues and aware of policy decisions so that we can advocate for what we think is best. So I really love this cartoon. How old do you have to be before you know what's going on? You could be 0, right? Like, well, I mean, you got to be able to understand, right? But as students, especially as 8th graders or middle schoolers, you're fully equipped to understand what's going on. And so that's what we're really going to be looking at with this one today. The question really is like, have you ever felt really strongly about a decision that was made at your school or made for your community, like strongly in favor of it or strongly against it, or maybe you had a really strong opinion before the decision was made? Well, what we want to do with our lesson this week is to really help you to understand how local government policies and cost-benefit analysis help you as a citizen, you as a community member, to weigh in on important decisions and develop a good opinion about issues. So what I want to do next is kind of give you some background on what school and government is. I have the little writing icon up here, but I encourage you not to copy down everything. I encourage you to kind of jot down things you didn't know or use shortened forms of what I write. So first thing you need to remember is that public schools are run by the government and they're paid for by taxes, right? Like, technically, Miss Green and I, we are government workers, right? Because we fulfill that service that the government provides to people, which is a public education. The school board is basically the local level of the executives, the local level administrators for public schools. And sometimes they hire a superintendent to really execute those policies and come up with a vision. So I have a picture of there right there of RPS's superintendent, Jason Camrus. You've seen a lot of him probably. He's been very vocal and kind of present in this COVID situation. So we had a hired superintendent at RPS. But it's not just RPS that makes the decisions that matter in school. It's also state and federal bodies that oversee education as well. So let's talk about some of those. So Virginia, our state, has something called the Department of Education. Sometimes you might hear people refer to it as the DOE. And so there's a little picture of it there, and Virginia is for learners, which I really love. But our country has a Department of Education too. They're just called DOE, not V, because no Virginia. I have their logo there. It's this growing tree, which I also think is a really great logo for knowledge. Both the DOE and the VDOE have their own leaders that also make policy decisions. So let's look at the VDOE. Here I have literally captured the front page of the Virginia Department of Education. There's a few things I want to point out to you. First is that it says the VDOE is an agency of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So you know we're fancy in Virginia, we're more than just a state, we're a commonwealth, right? That's the word we like to use. And the DOE is an agency, is an executive group, an executive body that's a part of the state government, right? Another thing I want to point out is this bit about SOLs. Our SOLs are developed and created by the VDOE. And then I really love their vision here. Read it with me. It says, the vision of the Virginia Department of Education in collaboration with the Governor, Secretary of Education, General Assembly, Virginia Board of Education, local school boards like our RPS school board, education stakeholders, and parents, is to create an excellent system of public education that prepares every Virginia student for success. So that is their vision as a department. And you can see, I love that list of all the different people they work with, right? They don't just make decisions on their own. They have to make decisions with the governor, the Secretary of Education, the General Assembly, which is our legislative body in Virginia. And I actually have here, notice that there is a superintendent for the VDOE. His name is Dr. Lane, and there's his picture, right? So the VDOE definitely has a say in what you experience as a student of RPS, because you've probably taken SOLs before, right? Well, that comes from the Virginia Department of Education. But that's not all. Here is a screen of the front homepage of the US Department of Education, or sometimes people call it the DE or the DOE. And I want to point out here the Secretary of Education. Her name is Betsy DeVos. She's someone who's appointed by the president. And because she's a part of, she's a secretary, right? And she's a part of the Department of Education, that means that she fills a spot on the president's cabinet. Now, remember what a cabinet is. It isn't like, oh, I put my dishes in the cabinet. It's not that kind of thing. The president's cabinet is a group of people who lead departments, lead agencies of the national government, and advise him or her and assist him or her. So Betsy DeVos is that Secretary of Education who leads the US Department of Education and seeks to advise President Trump. But she's not elected. All cabinet members are appointed by the president and approved by the Congress. So let's think about how all of these things tie together. Remember, maybe you've been remembering as we've kind of walked through, that last couple lessons ago we talked about federalism. The United States is a federal system. So this means state and local governments have to follow national guidance. They do have some wiggle room, right, with, you know, the reserved powers to kind of make some decisions on their own, but education is definitely something that falls under state and national kind of supervision. Some states and localities, which I think you might have heard about, I know there's been some in, like, I think North or South Dakota, they're opening up schools again. They're going to school again before the year ends. But what about Virginia? What is the state and city policies for schools and learning during COVID? What should school look like when we return? These are kind of the questions we want to talk about as we consider how all of these work together. I want to give you an example. So for example, we had a really pressing question as soon as we left. It was, oh my gosh, it's just over 2 months ago when we left school, right? Are we going to take SOLs? Like, we were just going to start reviewing and take those tests. Are we going to take them? I'm going to walk you through how the policy decision about this got made. So Our RPS superintendent, Jason Cameras, definitely heard the concerns of students and parents and teachers and principals about how we're going to do SOLs. And he consulted with the VDOE, right? He went a step above to the state government, right? The VDOE, at that same time, they were hearing from more people than just Superintendent Cameras and the RPS school board. They had to get permission, both from the General Assembly and the federal government to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have SOL testing this year. Can we waive testing this year given this crisis, right? So they had to make action too. So eventually the federal government, the DOE with Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education, they approved. And the VDOE approved it with the state. So they said, hey, localities, if you don't want to do your testing this year for SOL, it's okay, it's been waived for this spring. So that's how we can make that decision. Jason Cameras and your principal or your teacher didn't make that decision. It goes through a chain of command. What's another example? What about distance learning? So how are we going to continue to teach students even though, you know, we're not at school, some people don't have computers, how are we going to do things, right? Well, remember when we first started, they had just packets, right? Maybe your teacher got you a packet, or when you were picking up some food from a location, you could get a packet. And we really quickly realized from teachers and students and parents especially, like, oh, I can't teach my kid this math, I need more help, right? So we are like, okay, we've got to do this technology thing, but we know not everybody has laptops. So they had to organize a laptop and hotspot distribution, right? And then finally, we got RPS at Home Watch. That's how you're watching me, right? So that one was a little different. They didn't have to go all the way to the state or national government, but they had to weigh some decisions and figure out some problems in offering distance learning and come up with some solutions. So what I want to talk about and get you thinking on for your mission for today in preparation for Ms. Green's video is, what should school look like during coronavirus pandemic or any kind of pandemic? When should the schools open again? What if we get to August and our communities still aren't back to normal? Like, how do we start a new school year when we can't even come to school? How are we going to do this? What should schools do to keep students and teachers and everybody in the community safe until there's a vaccine, right? So I really love this picture I have of at the top. That is from a Japanese school where not all of Japan was in a full shutdown or a lockdown, and some of them just had to change the way they do things. So you can see their desks are spaced apart. They have individual desks. They have like little, plexiglass cubicles around them. They're all wearing masks. So that's some of the things that they came up with to continue to have school. Or is it going to be like the picture on the bottom? You're going to be still at home with your mom or your dad or your grandma or your brothers and sisters learning online. Like, how does it work best? So to prepare for this and to really get you thinking, I'm sure you have a lot of ideas already about how you want things to be, especially you 8th graders who are thinking about high school, right? We have a mission for you today. How are we going to apply this cost-benefit analysis to this problem? So this mission for today is, we want you to read a news article that's linked in the learning plan. And if you're having trouble getting to it, it's a really easy article to find. If you just go into a Google search and you type in how school will change when kids return to classrooms, just like that, and you put quotes around it. I know if you've ever learned this, when you put quotes around something in a search, it searches for that just like it says. It's pretty helpful. And then you do plus sign, and then you do quotes around usnews.com. You're going to find an article that we think is really interesting. It gives a lot of good ideas, things you have to consider when you have school again. We want you to read that, and after or while you're reading it, please write down either the top 3 ideas or plans that you think are best when it comes to having schools open again. Maybe you have another idea that comes into your head as you read this. We want you to write that one down too. And that's how we'll get you ready to really think about what are the costs and benefits of going back to school during the pandemic. Okay, so I want to remind you about social media. Our Twitter at RPS Civics at Home is still active. We'd love to have you guys tweet at us. And anytime you finish a mission, if you'd like to take a picture of those 3 ideas that you wrote down after reading, we would love to see what ideas are most popular with our students. Please email Ms. Green at cgreen8@rbaschools.net. Oh, and I do want to give a shout out. I want to shout out Joshua Espada D for completing some work for us last week. We saw that. We thought that was really great. And Ms. Green is going to have more shout outs for you guys on Thursday. So to close today, we're just really thinking about like choices, right? We've talked a lot about that with our last economics lessons, right? But it's all about this cat being like, looks like a yummy hedgehog, but I know the negative is those spikes, right? So when we think about school and we think about continuing to learn from home, or how are we going to make this work, there's a lot of good things about learning from home. I'm sure you've rediscovered your bike, or what it feels like to be outside a lot of the day. But then there's also like, my mom's not the best teacher, my dad's not the best teacher, my siblings are too loud, right? These are all things that we're going to have to weigh in cost benefit analysis as we figure out exactly how we go back to school. So thanks for tuning in for today, the part 1 lesson on local government and schools. And we really hope that you'll tune back in on Thursday with some ideas after reading your mission work from that news article about what you think we should do for schools to reopen. And you'll be able to see Miss Green on Thursday. Okay? Have a great one, guys. Bye-bye.